We're talking chapters 41 and 42 of The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. The crew's been reunited except for Tom. Moraine realizes that all signs lead to the Eye of the World and tells the group that they need to leave Camelin in a hurry.
Hello, we are the Doctors Who podcast. My name is Chris.
My name is Chip.
My name is
And
Brian.
We are covering chapters 41 and 42. There is a lot going on. There's a happy reunion, so why don't we jump in and start with Chip?
All right, so as Chris said, there's a lot going on in these chapters. Just a few of the highlights that I really enjoy are I like how Loial is so in tune to the nature of the Taviran with, really kind of everything that's kind of happening around Rand. He's very quickly identified Rand as someone who's, important, or that there's just something that he wants to be around this guy to see what happens. Some of the other things that we learn about, so we learn that all of the Aes Sedai that are in Camelin are all the Red Ajah, that are there with Logain. Moraine kind of puts all these clues together and finds out that everything's kind of leading her towards the Eye of the World. So then they've got this destination they need to get to. And as they look, they've got the Whitecloaks in the city. They've got Trollocs and Fades outside the city. There's really only one way they can go to get there, and Loial is not happy about it. So there's a lot to talk about.
Man, there was a lot in these chapters, and I'll be honest, the very first thing I thought of when I was looking back and reflecting on these chapters was, thank goodness the group got back together. I really, as a first-time reader, was afraid that this book was going to end and they weren't going to get back together. So I feel like there was a lot that they were able to unpack between each other, which was fantastic. And they also got to address Matt being weird. And I kind of felt like I was kind of grumpy with Matt. Like, I know there was something wrong with him, and we talked about this in prior episodes, but I'm glad to have the old Matt back. I, for one, am glad that everyone's back together and they're finally able to move forward. It feels like the story, like, it just hit me in the feels that we're finally back on track. Things are looking up. We'll see where it goes from here.
Yeah, so this is the chapter, that as a reader you've been waiting for. You're like, okay, when is the party going to finally reunite with each other? When are we going to have that reunion? And this is where it happens, and it is mostly a happy affair, right until we get into the Matt thing, and you have Rand saying something about Matt being sick, and you have Nynaeve saying, well, let's go get him better. And you have Moraine seeing him, and she's like, oh crap. So there is a lot of stuff. I mean, it's the reunion. It is the kind of like the fun of Rand relaying his adventures. It's, Moraine healing Matt, and still the realization that that Matt still has the dagger, where Rand is like, oh crap, and Moraine's like, no, really, it's okay, I can't take it away from him. So it's a happy chapter, largely. It's a happy set of chapters, and then it also does serve to kind of be a jumping point into what comes next. So, all right, let's hit on how awesome Master Gil is, that he's willing to risk his livelihood and his life to get Rand out of town.
And I kind of had that in my notes too, with Master Gil. And is it that he's just a genuinely good guy?
Yeah,
that he really liked Tom? or is it, when Moraine talks about because she's in touch with the true source that, people around her kind of, there's a ripple effect that can happen for like protection. But is there an influence that Rand has because of his nature as a Taviran, and that he's, unknowingly at this point touching the true source? Is there some ripple effect that Gil just trusts him, or is it, all of that put together? Because the whole weaving of the pattern is kind of a fun plot device to play with, because nothing is coincidental anymore. It's all part of this master plan that has been there for the ages.
Well, and you're right, it is, because and this is a great mechanic for Jordan to explain away, coincidences or things that don't seem plausible. It's like, oh, it's the pattern because of this reason, and every I think every fantasy series has some version of this, but this is a pretty ingenious one. So, yeah.
Although I kept waiting for the shoe to drop where, Rand and Matt had so many down moments along the way. They just, like from the beggar when they were on the road, and even like the farmer that they rode on the back of the cart with, like they just kind of felt uneasy the entire time. I just kept waiting for Matt and Perrin to, I expected fully that this story was going to take another dive down. I'm glad that we kind of have bottomed out and we're coming back out of it. Master Gil seems like a stand-up guy, and I'm curious to know, is there more about him later on in the series? It seems like he has his own interesting backstory, and why is he so loyal to the Queen? There just seems like there's more there than what we've been presented. But yeah, he's so far one of the most friendly characters we have met outside the Two Rivers.
Well, the part about being loyal to the Queen, I think that is, I might be straying into political territory here. So, but largely, I think if a queen has the interests of her people in mind, those people are going to be largely loyal to her. That being said, you have this faction that seems to be against the Queen, and you can equate that to kind of the political situation in the United States right now, right? Where you have like these warring factions within this kingdom or this country, and somebody's right and somebody's wrong, and I'm not going to say who's who.
Yeah. The other wrinkle there with Master Gil is his relationship with Tom, who also had a relationship with the Queen.
Yep.
So, it's kind of, I'm not sure kind of where those things land, but yeah, obviously Gil is, for our heroes' purposes, he's a good guy and he's helping them out.
And that's a good point too. We still don't know. We say the entire group is back together, but we're still minus Tom. So, we don't have any good closure on where he is or what. Like, we assume he's dead, but is he really? I don't know.
Well, they say in comic books that nobody's really dead unless you see the body.
Yep. And even then,
it's not guaranteed, right?
Right.
So,
how many times has Loki died?
At least 3.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to bring up,
and he still got his own series.
That's true.
Sorry.
True.
Which is pretty fun so far.
It is.
I wanted to talk about Loial in this one and just his kind of recognizing Rand for what he is. But I want to go back to, I think it was chapter 40. Whenever Elaida talked to Rand in the palace, and she said something about his foretelling. So she said, "This too I foretell. Pain and division come to the whole world, and this man stands at the heart of it." And she's talking about Rand. And then Rand, flees from the palace, runs back to the Queen's blessing, and he's telling Loial everything that's happened, and Master Gil's there too, but all this stuff. And then Loial says, "I'd like to go with you when you leave, Rand." And then Rand's like, I thought the matter was settled, blah, blah, blah. And then Loial says something about, well, we've seen Darkfriends, Aes Sedai, and Light knows what else. You're truly Gil and Rand. The pattern weaves itself around you, and you stand at the heart of it. And at that point, Rand's like, I don't stand at the heart of anything. But it's just funny that he and Elaida basically said the same thing.
Right.
That, Elaida's an Aes Sedai. Loial, we don't believe has any, he's got some things that we'll learn about him. But, I don't think he touches the true source or anything. He just has this history. He's well-educated, has this knowledge, and he just recognizes that there's a lot of things happening around this guy that is from the Two Rivers, but looks like he's an Aielman and has kind of, falls into the palace, meets the queen, meets the princess, or anyway. Well, I just thought
and
that whole thing was
going back to that section of chapters. It's like how Ta'veren, I think I saw something once that said, don't make fun or don't ridicule people who say words differently. It means they read them in a book instead of hearing them, right? So it's like with this, it's like, is it Ta'veren? Is it Ta'veren? Is it Manetheren? Is it Manetheren? Is it Loial? Is it whatever, right?
I think I probably said them each 3 different ways already tonight.
Yeah, but I mean, it's... Where was I going with that?
Well, the point of saying these words is so that, I don't know, if people can understand what you're talking about, does the pronunciation really matter that much?
It's like pony versus poney.
It sure don't.
Right. I mean, people know what you're saying, so therefore you're still communicating, and it's still, makes a point.
There you go.
Anyway, I think I wanted to go back to Loial and just say, that this guy's such an interesting character for being a young 90-year-old Ogier. Yeah, I just like the way he kind of looks at things and sees things for what they are.
And he's so calm and collected, right? I mean, it reminds me of the Ents from Lord of the Rings.
He's like Treebeard, just kind of does things at his own pace, but he gets there eventually. I love when he starts to tell, a story or relate something to Moraine, and she's kind of like, okay, we got to hurry this up. We don't have all night. Yeah. Well, because that actually happens here, where he's talking about the man who came to the steading, and that was talking about something, and the Eye of the World came up, and then that triggers Perrin to realize that, the Eye of the World. Well, the Tinkers mentioned that, and then the dreams come up, and it's like, they said that the Eye of the World won't obey you or won't serve you, and so. But anyway.
Well, and it's. I think this is actually in like chapter 43 or 44, but it's like that's the moment where Moraine is like, okay, the pattern intersected these three threads where you have these 3 instances that mention the Eye of the World and the Green Man and all this stuff. So
that's in chapter 42. Well, I guess the Green Man doesn't come up till later, but the fact that all these things converge, and she realized that it isn't just Rand that's Ta'veren, it's Matt, Rand, and Perrin, which that kind of surprised Moraine too, that she was expecting 1 but not 3.
Yeah, but I think that it's interesting too, because if we keep talking about the pattern, it's like the pattern's now introduced the thread of Loial, who is their only way of accessing the ways, which is their only way of getting to the Blight, where the Eye of the World and the Green Man are. So it is like, the wheel and the pattern are actively working to maintain themselves. I don't know if that's the right word, but
is it like whatever the timeline is in the new Loki series, is like all these things that have to kind of be in place for this timeline to work. So Loial had to leave the steading 3 years ago to be at the Queen's Blessing at this time to meet Rand.
Right. So it's interesting because you have all these converging threads that are what I assume is, the beginning of, if I may, the Sanderlanche. We keep talking about that, right? And we talked about it when it happened with Mistborn. We talked about it kind of in Dune when things started heating up, and now we're talking about it here. And it's probably not fair to call it the Sanderlanche because the Sanderlanche happened decades after these books were written, but the concept still applies.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And were you saying, Chip, that you were excited to get to the point where they hit the ways and?
Yeah, the ways are just cool. And we'll talk more about them in the next episode. But
yeah.
But the way that they introduce it's basically, Lan and Moraine are like, yeah, there's Whitecloaks in the city. We can't really leave through the city safely. We know that there's Fades and Trollocs surrounding the city. We can't really leave on any road out of the city. So then they meant, and Loial happens to be there to say, yep, we're gonna have to use the ways, which he flatly refuses to begin with. But then they realize that it's their only way to safety is to risk the ways to get out of town.
Well, and Moraine straight out says, she's like, the pattern is forcing our path here. We have these 3 threads that come up mentioning the Eye of the World. We are all of a sudden presented with an Ogier who can get us through the ways to get us to the Blight before the forces of the Dark One get there. So...
Yeah, because otherwise it would have been like a weeks-long journey to get to the Blight from where they're at, and possibly months.
Yeah. So I guess next week we get to experience the ways. So that being said, we appreciate you watching this video. We do invite you to like and subscribe to the channel. And if you subscribe, the little bell notification is down there, and it will notify you whenever we post new content, which is, for the most part, every week. So we also enjoy comments. Utilize the comment section. Let us know what you think. Give us some things that you liked or didn't like, or let us know if we misstated or completely got something wrong. It's happened before, it will happen again, just like the turning of the wheel. So do that. Use the comments. Also check out our Patreon page. It's linked below. We do have some cool perks. We think they're cool perks. So if you have some money burning a hole in your pocket and you need a way to spend it, that just might be it. We will see you next time. We will adventure into the ways, and we will get to see why Loial is so nervous about them. But in the meantime, again, thank you, and until next time,
Alonzi.